Hello there, fellow seekers of healing and well-being. It's me, Michaela. I am your host, and I'm here to share an incredible journey that has transformed my life in ways that I could have never imagined. My own personal quest to find healing from injury, to cope with life stresses, and to strive for mental and physical health has led me on an extraordinary path, introducing me to some truly amazing individuals who share my passion for holistic health and well-being. As I embarked on this journey, I discovered a network of dedicated and skilled professionals who were not only experts in their fields, but also had an aligned mission of offering holistic health and healing to others. Their commitment to helping people find true wellness ignited a fire within me and inspired me to create something truly special for our community right here on the beautiful Central Coast of California. And so I present to you the podcast, Healing.Yourself.Whole. This platform serves as a beacon of light, shining a spotlight on alternative and holistic health practitioners who are making a difference in people's lives. Through the podcast, we delve deep into their stories, their expertise, and their unique approaches to healing, giving you the opportunity to get to know these practitioners on a personal level. But we didn't stop there. In collaboration with the wonderful team at Expand and Breathe, we've crafted an extraordinary experience called the Healer Talk series. This series offers you the chance to not only learn about the practitioners, but also to experience their transformative work firsthand, all at an affordable price. It's an incredible opportunity to dip your toes into various healing modalities and to discover what resonates with you. If you're feeling stuck on your own healing journey, longing for answers, or just simply curious about new opportunities and avenues for well-being, look no further than Healing.Yourself.Whole. This podcast is your go-to resource, connecting you with the finest practitioners in the Central Coast area of California. Together, we're building a supportive and nurturing community dedicated to your holistic health and well-being. So join us on this remarkable journey of self-discovery, healing, and empowerment. Let's embrace the power of alternative and holistic health together as we embark on a transformative path towards living our best, most vibrant lives. The Healing Yourself Whole podcast is here for you every step of the way. Hello and welcome back to Healing Yourself Whole, this podcast in collaboration with Expand and Breathe. Today we have a beautiful guest here, and I couldn't be more excited to introduce you to her. She's been a profound instrument into my own healing practice. Jahara Sara of Radiance Therapy. Jahara is a trauma-informed licensed occupational therapist. She's experienced and a registered yoga teacher. She's a role model method practitioner, as well as a JFB myofascial release therapist and a Tensegrity Medicine practitioner who is committed to helping people move through the world authentically with a greater sense of freedom, ease, and safety in their body. So I'm so excited to introduce you to Jahara. So welcome, Jahara.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you here. You know, as a part of healing yourself whole, you know, on our path to healing, I I kind of believe that our path to healing is so much greater than just like the sense of wholeness, right? It's like a lot of times we think of like wholeness as if we're like trying to put ourselves back together and make ourselves perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And really that path to wholeness is starting to understand all of our parts, right? All of the shadow sides, as well as those light and beautiful sides, as like the greater whole of who we are, and starting to learn to love and accept those things in many ways. And all of our paths to getting there are a little bit different, right? And I feel we can learn so much from one another and what we've gone through on our own individual journeys, which is part of the reason why we started this, right?
Yeah.
Why we've created this podcast. So I'd love to have you share about yourself and introduce yourself a little bit more, and to hear more about your healing journey as well. So,
yeah. Happy to share, and welcome and hello to everyone. So I had a pretty rough upbringing as a young child, and I remember when I was about 18 or 19, I really started to shut down and had, my body was telling me that I needed to stop doing the things I was doing, stop pursuing, and really overworking and being a perfectionist, as we were talking about earlier before we got on the podcast. I was really, really pushing myself hard. And my body said, no more. You need to stop. And I do remember it was probably when I was 21 at this point. I woke up one morning and my body was in so much pain, and it like came out of nowhere. It felt like my whole body was like in pain. And I had my partner at that time bring me to the doctor, and the doctor prescribed me with some medication for depression, and I threw it out. And I said, there's something my body wants me to do. And so I'm going to look for ways to listen to what my body is trying to tell me. And I remember going to the school psychologist, and I said, is there anything you can do for me? I don't want to take medication. My body's in pain. I feel like I can't function. I can't do schoolwork. I can't focus on anything. And he said, well, here's a meditation tape. Try that. And that was like the door just like blew open. And I just knew in that moment that there was a way to unravel whatever was happening. And soon after, I found that was my body having a response to emotional trauma, like a built up emotional trauma that was not being addressed or not given a safe space to release and be seen. So that's like the beginning of my journey. There's so many chapters from that point forward. But just to kind of give listeners a sense of already that connection between our bodies giving us messages. And usually there's, there may be something actually physically going on, in the system, but oftentimes there's an emotional component threaded throughout all of it. Yeah. And for me, that was true. And now I think I really do, when I look back at that, I think, well, of course I do the work I do today. Of course I work with fascia, and of course I work with people's bodies. And I understand that connection of trauma and the body being one portal, and mindfulness, being a way to sort of open and start that process of healing in a really slow, gentle, progressive way.
Yeah. I find it so interesting and frustrating at the same time to like hear that the first response is usually like medication versus like understanding, But I think it's so beautiful that your intuition was like, no, there's something deeper. There's something deeper to this. And it's really taking you onto the path of who you are today, and how you serve the world. And I think that's just so beautiful that you listened, Do you remember what the meditation was, or?
It was a cassette tape, people. So it was like, I forget what year, but I'm 40. So it was when I was 20. I want to say it was something similar to insight meditation, which is what I ended up moving. I've done a lot of meditation over the years and long retreats, and primarily insight meditation, Vipassana meditation have been the techniques that worked for me. And I think, again, in retrospect, I think the reason they worked for me is because they were at least insight meditation. Vipassana can be a little intense. Was just like gentle and simple enough for me to do the practice. So I want to say that it was like an insight meditation type meditation. And for listeners who don't know what that is, it's really just about being present with the breath and the sensations in your body. Vipassana is a very specific technique of going from head all the way to your toes, through the body, feeling that, all the sensations, and then from the toes back to the head over and over and over again, and just feeling every part of your body and the sensations in a methodical way. Whereas insight meditation, there's like variations on it, focusing on the breath at the nose. It's just so simple. And I really clung to that. That felt like, okay, I can do this. This doesn't feel complicated. And being a trauma survivor and complex trauma survivor, I really needed like baby steps. So that felt like, okay, this I can do. And I think that tape, what I remember was that it just felt very simple and very comforting. And it was just about like focusing on breath and sensations in my body.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating, because I think when we are kind of living with trauma, a lot of times we can start to mute our connection to our senses altogether, because it's survival. In a lot of ways, we're just going and we forget to learn how to listen. And so what's so beautiful about insight meditation, or just, starting to become aware of something as simple as your breath and your senses, is it starts to kind of reawaken that connection that you've kind of ran away from for so long, and it's like you're rebuilding this relationship with yourself, right? In a lot of ways that you might have subconsciously diverted, in a way, right?
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I was just thinking like of the book When the Body Says No, and right. Have you read that book?
I haven't.
When the Body Says No.
Who wrote it?
I believe, isn't that Dr. Gabor Mate? Am I mistaken?
Well, I haven't read his book.
And I could be wrong. But it talks a lot about how like our psyche, he's a psychologist, just like the different things that he experienced with his clients and what they were experiencing in their body and how they were carrying trauma in their body, and how important it is for us to be able to listen to it, and how connected it is to when we start to feel dis-ease in the body, it turns into disease over time. So how important it is for us to understand our emotions instead of suppress them, since that's something that, for so many years, since we've been able to have depressants or antidepressants and anxiety medications and ADHD medications and all these things to kind of Band-Aid and cover over, we've kind of lost the understanding of the importance of the emotions and what they really have to tell us.
Yeah. And that actually makes me think of one of my notes that I wrote down.
I love it.
Because I didn't want to forget. I had went back to some reading of Peter Levine, who created somatic experiencing, and wrote, Waking the Tiger, which is a beautiful book about trauma. And he used the term emotional scarring that happens to sort of bridge this into fascia. And if listeners don't know what fascia is, it's maybe let me share this first, and then I'll explain fascia.
Yes,
we can do a full circle back. So he talks about how the emotional scar that gets set in the tissue. And when we're thinking about fascia, our connective tissue, the way that that connective tissue is like created and laid down in our body is through stressors or tension. So because emotion is energy in motion, if that energy is in the body and then it doesn't get moved out, it stays stuck. It can create an actual like scar in the tissue. And so he uses the term emotional scar. And I think there was some other, what did he call it? Latent energy. So it like becomes this latent energy. And that to me makes so much sense in thinking about literally the fascia in our body, which I'll go into explaining that a little bit, is I like to describe it as like the enveloping of every single part in our body, including the cells, the muscles, the nerves, the organs underneath our skin. I mean, it is literally encasing everything, but really holding everything. And it's like we actually, we're like self-assembling beings. So like from the embryo, our fascia sort of created us and everything grew within it. So to think about that, like wrapping your brain around that, like we are fascia.
And that's what I think is like one of the most foundational things. That's like, so I love fascia, first of all. Like I really started digging into it a few years ago, and like it's just been mind blowing, like to really like get into like what fascia really is. But just to like realize that like we started out as fascia, like in the embryo, like that was the first cells that started to grow was your fascia. And the first thing it created is your heart, which is really beautiful, right? It starts to create the organs, right? Well, at least the heart is the first organ that's created, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know.
Could be wrong. Okay.
You might know more than me on that piece of the sequence. Yeah.
Well, I know the heart is the first organ that is created, but it is created from fascia, and everything that within us is created from fascia. So, can you continue to elaborate on the fascia and the fascial system? Because I know for me, like, I know fascia provides glide and slide and movement for everything. And like you had said, it envelopes like every muscle, every bone, every organ, everything is like created around fascia. Fascia envelopes around it. Even the fibers of the muscles are wrapped in fascia to allow movement in our body. Without fascia, we would not be able to move. So what is fascia? What is it made of? Like
so it's also just to say that it is our sensing system. Because the fascia is so richly innervated with sensory nerve endings, the way we know where we are in space, the way we know where our body parts are, if we were to close our eyes, is because of our fascia. Our fascia is sending all that information to our brains. So it's really, and I think that there was an article that I had shared with Michaela by Mei-Wan Ho about fascia being liquid crystal. And she even says in there, it's like the fascia essentially is like the body consciousness. Like when we think of an awareness of our body doing insight meditation, it's like, oh, how am I actually feeling that? Is through the sensory nerve endings in the fascia that I can feel all these things happening.
Absolutely. And we're definitely going to dive into consciousness of fascia in a second, for sure.
Okay, great.
I love it.
So fascia is what is holding our body together in one way, shape, or form. Outside of, our skin is like our outside skin. Our fascia is like all the inside, little parts of inside skins. And the components are fibers. So it has collagen fibers, elastin fibers. There are resident cells that live in the fascia, like fibroblasts, which creates more of the collagen and the fascia, the tissue. And then there's the ground substance, which is the liquid crystal, the hyaluronin. And that liquid crystal that is like when it's healthy, when that fascia is healthy, it's fluid, it's movable. So it helps with the slide and glide of the tissue. But when there's, trauma or injury or stress, that becomes dehydrated. And so there's that state change in that liquid crystal, and it becomes more dehydrated. And then the fascia doesn't move and glide as well. And then, of course, when there's not that gliding and movement, the toxins can't get out and nutrients can't get in. So a lot of times, like if I'm working on an area on myself or someone else where it's tender, it's like, oh, well, there's probably toxins in there that haven't been able to get moved out. So that's why there's a tender sensation.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So what was the crystal again? It was
hyaluronic.
Hyaluronic. Okay. Like hyaluronic acid.
Yeah.
Okay. Hyaluronic. So hyaluronic crystal, it's predominantly like a water base, right? Is that correct?
Yes. Because the collagen is what binds with the water. And so that's how like fascia is, it's those different parts together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with, is it The Secret Messages of Water?
Yes. And I read that so long ago that I don't recall.
Yeah.
Do you have like some things about it that you wanted to share?
Yeah. No. So the author is Masaru Emoto.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure that we have his name, because The Messages of Water is just such a phenomenal book, and we'll take it back to emotion. What's really fascinating about the book is that he is looking into the cellular level of water, and how the cellular level of water changes based on emotions that are emitted to it.
Yes. Okay. I remember now.
Yeah. And so when you have a certain emotion, like let's say just anger or frustration, then the liquid crystal, when you look at inside of it, or the water, when you look inside of it, creates almost like a snowflake energy, or like, and it might have been, anyways. And each emotion has a different molecular structure. And the emotions like joy and peace and love, those cellular structures look very symmetrical and just interconnected. And then the ones like anger, or, all of these other, like, I wouldn't say lower energies. I mean, if you're looking at, I guess the scale of energetics, then I guess the lower energetic field. When you look at it at a cellular level, those cells are not complete. Like they don't have that symmetry to them, which is really fascinating to me. And there was different ways that you can emit emotion at water to make it change, whether it's even putting a label on the water. You notice, like if you were to put a label on your water bottle of hope or joy, it changes it from the inside out or from the outside in. And they actually ended up going to a river that was dying, and like the fish weren't like living in it anymore. And they were, so they went around the lake and they meditated over and over and over again. And it actually brought back the ecosystem by sending it love and joy and hoping for harmony and all of those things within the ecosystem. So it proved, on top of the fact that the cellular level does change with emotion, that you can also heal with it, right? Our environment around us. Yeah. So what I think is so beautiful and interconnected with it is like, we all know that we are predominantly water and we're predominantly fascia, and that's where the majority of the water lives, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, like that is just like, so succinctly tied together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's amazing. And it makes me think of too, there's the piezoelectric effect in when we apply low load, prolonged tension into the fascia, which is what we'll get to this too. This part of the work I do is that low load, prolonged hold at like putting the fibers on tension, is that can then release the piezoelectric effect, which is like an energy that moves through the water. And I think in Mei-Wan Ho's article too, again, her article was so beautiful and very sciencey, like kind of at a point where I was like, I don't know how much I can take all of this in, but definitely read it if you're interested.
Yeah. We'll add a link to it.
Yeah, we'll add a link.
We'll add a link. Yeah.
But yeah, so she was talking about sort of like the direct currents too, right? Within the liquid crystal, that it's a conducting force.
And she actually follows like the Chinese medicine meridian lines in the body, and was really fascinating. Well, first of all, it's just mind blowing that we have liquid crystals in our body. I had heard that we had crystals in our pineal gland, but to know that it's in our full fascial system, and to understand now, like, about like fascial slings and all of these like things that are going on within our body and how interrelated they are with like our meridians. It's like, I just feel like incredibly grateful to be at this stage and of understanding like how close we are to understanding our body at an energetic level, and how important it is to be able to share this so that other people can articulate how important it is to these things are real, people.
This is real. And our bodies are self-healing.
Yes.
Like there's so much. And I think, I kind of want to jump back a little bit to my story, because I also think that if anyone's listening to this who is a trauma survivor and maybe is just starting that journey, is that it is important to take it in small doses. Because I remember early on how scary it was to like feel my body that intensely through meditation. And so I really feel like having these resources, like having people to support and help, and group settings where there's a lot of tenderness and compassion for, the messiness of healing. Yeah. And that can show up when if we do tap into an emotional scar in the fascia and something opens up, is like sometimes what happens isn't really explainable by the brain. It's just like the body's doing what it needs to do. And what I mean by that is like if there's movement that has to happen, or like shaking or trembling, like that's totally natural for in the animal kingdom. It's not normalized yet in our modern society. I think more so there's like spaces where we can go to feel safe, to have those experiences, and that more of those are popping up, which is so important.
It is. It's really important, because we've lost the understanding of community and what it means to be in community and in support of one another within community. Yeah. And in order for us to heal, seeing other people on their journey helps us heal, and we need supportive spaces to be able to do that, where it's safe, I mean, that's why I created the Expand and Breathe, because we needed it. We were coming out of a pandemic, and we always have needed it, but now, more than ever, we really needed it. So, and you have a beautiful safe space as well. I really enjoyed my time with you, spending in your space as well here in downtown SLO at Radiance Therapy. And now a word from our sponsors. Are you seeking a space to expand your horizons and nurture your well-being? Look no further. We are excited to introduce you to Expand and Breathe, your go-to destination for holistic health and wellness. At Expand and Breathe, we believe in the power of connection, self-care, and personal growth. Our community-driven healing arts studio offers a wide range of transformative experiences, from Pilates and meditation to breathwork and alternative healing modalities. Immerse yourself in enlightening conversations, explore ancient wisdom, and delve into practices that elevate your consciousness. Expand and Breathe brings together visionary teachers, healers, and thought leaders who are dedicated to uplifting individuals and fostering a sense of unity.
Expand and Breathe has been a life changer for me. Through their one-on-one Pilates, breath classes, and healing sessions, I've discovered a sense of balance and inner peace that I never thought was possible.
Expand and Breathe has been a transformative experience for me. The program's holistic approach to personal growth and well-being has empowered me to expand my horizons, find inner peace, and embrace a more fulfilling life.
Whether you're a seasoned wellness enthusiast or just beginning your journey, Expand and Breathe has something for everyone. Visit our website at expandandbreathe.com to explore our offerings and join our vibrant community. Are you ready to embark on a transformative journey of self-care and personal growth? Don't wait. Start your holistic wellness adventure with Expand and Breathe today. We invite you to be inspired, feel empowered, and honor yourself at Expand and Breathe. So when it comes to like myofascial release, like sometimes you don't exactly know that it's releasing until you've kind of like assigned an understanding, because sometimes it can be very subtle, right? Very soft. And my big word for 2023 is soften. And especially because I'm somebody who I found I am more and more aware of, like, where I feel pain is actually where I am holding and gripping in my body, and where my body has become unconscious, right? And these are all words I didn't really understand. They weren't in my vocabulary until I started to understand this work a little bit more. But the other day I was at the beach, and I was like practicing letting go into the ocean. And one of the things that I said was, I want to soften. Like, I want to let go of like some of this pain and tension that I've been feeling. And as I like let go into the ocean, it was one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had, because I literally felt my body in that area soften. I'm like, oh my God, I did this with my brain. And the help of the ocean. But what was so amazing is at that moment is that there was like these really enlightening clarities of like where that tension was coming from and how long it had been sitting inside of that area of my body, and why. And it was like in those moments, and it was very freeing and very therapeutic. It was like, wow, like one of the things that came up was like, for so long in my life, I felt like I had to like stay small. So I had like been gripping my ribs in a certain area. And like there was another time when like I remember like my brother and I like rolling around fighting, and he like kicked me in the side of my ribs, right? And like I was like those things that I'd been holding on for so long, and then just softening. And that like opened it up, and I just like I felt blown away by the amount of therapy somatically that I experienced in that moment by just allowing. It was just I don't know. Is that kind of...
Yeah, no, it totally, I mean, and it's such a great reminder of that connection of brain and body too, that we're really a brain body. We're not a brain and a body. It's like, we're a brain body, you know, it's connected, so connected. And what will happen a lot when I'm working with people is, or if people and myself are doing self-treatment. So myofascial release can be done with a practitioner working on someone else, but it can also be done on yourself using therapy tools, like a myofascial ball. And so oftentimes what will happen when I'm working on someone or I'm working on myself, is after there's that prolonged long hold and you're waiting, that just emotions will just show up. You know, they'll just sort of bubble, and then there might be like an image or a memory. And that to me is evidence enough. You know, I could read all the research articles in the world, but I'm like, so much of that happening with people I work with and on myself, it's like, well, that's evidence that there is a connection between what has happened in the past, how the body holds it, and just giving it that time and space. And I actually sometimes even think, you know, that even if I'm putting prolonged pressure on an area in my body where there is some restriction or adhesion in the fascia, I almost feel like just the intention and attention is that much more powerful than the prolonged mechanical stress or pressure being put into the body. And sort of the science behind that. It's like, but the intention too of just, hey, I'm here, I'm paying attention, I'm listening, I'm tuning in. I'm not just like brushing you off or keeping you sort of in the background of this annoying thing that's happening in my body, right? Like the messaging and the communication, it's amazing. You'll just watch it shift. It's like, oh, now it's gone. Wait a second. I was just feeling pain there, like 8 out of 10. And now it's like, just is not there.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I really just think it's such a profound practice, you know, to be doing, to be tending to the fascia, to the body, as a friend.
Yeah, absolutely. To befriend yourself.
Yeah, exactly. What a concept.
To befriend yourself and allow yourself to have emotions and to heal. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Because it sounds so simple, and it can be so simple, like once you start to understand it. So I want to go a little bit deeper into fascia and the consciousness and unconsciousness of fascia and in a second. But one last thing I did want to bring up, just by talking about the water concept and the concept of emotion and the fact that we are fascia. And this is just something I've been thinking about a lot, and I'm just curious about your opinion on it, is that when we're in the womb, right, and we're fascia, right, we talk about how a lot of times we're born with trauma, right? Like, part of me thinks that perhaps, like, you know, like, because as we're born, we're experiencing a lot of things from our mother, and she's already experiencing things from her mother, and then so on and so forth. So, like, that energetic vibration of emotion is also kind of within our fascia at a natal state, at a fetal state, right? Which I think is, I mean, this is something that I've just started to really wrap my head around lately when I've started to really put these little things together, right? So as we like are born and we continue to grow, like I just think it's really fascinating too. Cause I mean, do you find connections to that at all? Like, does that seem, yeah?
I would say, both yes, just experientially, you know, with understanding and through my own trauma healing, recognizing the ancestral, like that there's such strong cords with, you know, the patterns of our ancestors and our family. And there is too, and I actually, maybe I'll even just try to briefly say there was something in this article, Does Fascia Hold Memories? And I can't do it justice, but I know he writes in here about the epigenetics of tissue memory. And it is like, I had to read it a couple times, and I don't think I can do it justice, but I know that that's something that I want to dive into more, because I was like, I haven't done a lot of reading on that. Like, what are people finding when they're doing research on this? Because I know I feel that there's that tie. Because if we, as fascia outside of the womb, can then have an emotional scar, right, from stressors, then why wouldn't it be so in the womb? If we have fascia in the womb, and then we're getting an emotional stressor or just a chemical stressor or other stressors from our mother, then those would be then in our body as we come out. But, you know, if I were to speak to it just from like someone doing quantitative research on that, I know it's out there. I just haven't read it. Yeah. And I think it would be fascinating and that was a start. So we can put a link maybe to this article too in the show notes, because that was like sort of the way that he talked about it too, just seemed to explain it in a way where I was like, okay, if I read more of this, I think I could understand how they're finding those links in the womb. Yeah. 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 I mean, the reason why I bring it up, and I'm not saying like, oh, we're born as trauma cases. No, not to make anybody feel like there's no hope, because there is, right? Because like what we're saying is that there's opportunity to find healing in these areas that we might have been holding tension in for long before we ever knew, right? Yeah. There's opportunity to heal those areas. So, talk to me a little bit about like the healing of the fascia, like how
how that works. You'd mentioned, you apply pressure for a period of time, and it's usually, I think you said like a soft pressure or like a specific
low load. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's different techniques of fascial work. I mean, there's anywhere from like ligament stimulation, light touch therapies like Bowen work, to structural integration, which is more creates more friction in the fascia. And then there's like self-treatment techniques like the tune-up fitness, which I'm certified in, which again is providing pressure and friction into the fascia. And then there's John F. Barnes myofascial release, which is the technique I was trained in for hands-on work. And so the practice with that technique is putting low load into the tissue. So pressing hard enough down into the body to get into below the skin, to that there's the superficial fascia, which is just underneath the skin. And then underneath that, there's loose fascia. And then underneath that, there's the deep fascia. So it's all connected. So if you're moving and you're in that ground substance, like you're underneath the skin in that superficial layer, then you're moving all the layers. Like you're gently creating tension across the layers. So the technique is to go deep enough, but not too deep to create like a resistance, like what's the word I'm looking for? Like a bracing in the body. So it's like, really sensing and moving slowly too, so that the body has time to receive this input. And then creating opposing force. So moving that part of the body in one direction while creating a pull in the opposite direction. So that puts the connective tissue on, for lack of a better word, stretch. It's like it's providing tension into the tissue. And the that hold is so that collagen, that thicker, denser part of the tissue, can then lengthen and become longer. But the paradox of that is fascia actually, when it's stretched, it spreads. So it's not like it's getting narrower, it's actually opening. And a lot of times that's what, clients will say is like, when they feel that release, it's like, whoa, it just feels like it spreads out and like gets broader.
It expands.
Exactly. So that's the technique. There's other ways that you can work with the fascia too, like creating a little bit more friction, which again can help to break up the adhesions in the fascia and then allow more of that, the fluids and the cells that need to come in and the toxins that need to come out.
But it's not like deep tissue.
No, some of the mobilizing techniques can be a little bit like that, but there's no oils used.
Yeah.
Like if you use oils, then you're not actually getting the traction on the connective tissue because you're just gliding and moving along it versus actually catching the connective tissue and giving it a gentle tug.
Ah, that's fascinating.
Or pinning that top layer down and then moving the body. So that moves the superficial fascia on top of the loose fascia and the deep fascia. It helps to create like a torquing or friction.
Gotcha.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And you've mentioned before with fascia that there's a sense of tensegrity. I know we don't have like the ball with us.
I know. I thought I should have brought it. That would have been great. Yeah, tensegrity.
Can we talk a little bit about that? What tensegrity is?
Yeah, I wish I did have it. So look it up.
Yeah.
And
we'll link that too.
Yeah, like tensegrity structures. So tensegrity is a concept that was developed by Buckminster Fuller. I don't know if he developed it actually. He was an artist that created structures that were using this idea of there being tensile parts and compression parts. So how that applies to our body, you can think of our bones in our body as the compressive forces, and the muscles and fascia and tendons as the tensile forces. So the bones essentially are floating within the tensile forces. So if you look up Buckminster Fuller, maybe we could put a link there too with him, you'll see his structures where it's like, it looks like these rods are just floating in space because the tensile parts are creating the tension to hold the compressive forces in place. So the idea in the body, the term tensegrity translates then to biotensegrity, our body being a tensegral structure, is that our fascia is essentially floating everything inside of us. You know, like everything's floating inside the fascia. So how important is the balance of how the fascia is tensioned in our body to create harmony in our movement and just our ability to like hold ourselves up and those tensile forces. So if we have, you know, like I'll use one of my examples, like I have a symptom that I get here in my neck and it comes and goes and it's linked to an early trauma, which I know because I've done work on it and that will come up. And usually if I have a sensation here, it's like, oh, I need to deal with that part of me that was traumatized when I was 13. There's this link with that sensation that I've discovered through my own processes. But as well, there's a physical component where typically if I investigate a little bit more into this part of my body, I find, oh yeah, the right side of my jaw and my right hip flexors, those are pulling on the tensile structure of my body, creating this sensation in my left side neck. I mean, this is, again, everybody's body is totally different. But that concept of our bodies being a whole unit is so important for understanding when we have symptoms. Like typically the symptom where we're having it is not what's causing that symptom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's definitely something I've noticed in my own healing journey, and especially as a movement practitioner myself, is like, it's where that pain or where the symptom shows up is like the last straw, usually. It's like, that's where, you know, your body is saying, oh my gosh, okay, you guys, we need to take a few back steps and like figure out like where this is actually originating from. And that's actually where, when I discovered anatomy trains, it was like hugely mind-opening for me to really understand like all these different fascial slings and how they were interconnected, and like why the pain that I was having on like one side of my body was actually showing up as a torque on the other side of my body that was related to the way I was standing, you know, like all these little things that were all adding up. And yeah, I mean, just the anatomy trains are just like another fascinating thing to look at, to get an eye on how that works. I mean, and it's not just us too. It's really cool because it's also like in our animals. Like if you guys are animal lovers out there, if you have like any like dogs or horses too, like it's really fascinating because they're made of fascia too.
Yeah. And just to kind of plug back to what we were talking about before with the meridians and the liquid crystal and Mae-Wan Ho's article is Tom Myers, who wrote Anatomy Trains. That's the book that Michaela was just talking about. It's a fascinating book, great read. I think he talks about this somewhere in there, or I read it somewhere else, that they're very closely aligned with a lot of the acupuncture meridians. Yeah. So, I mean, just to go again to like what Mae-Wan Ho is talking about, it's like, oh, well, this is just phenomenal, you know, that there's these connections. And as much Tom Myers is brilliant, I mean, I would definitely not say he's not brilliant, but I also really love listening to Joanne Avison. She's kind of a fascial genius, and she even takes it almost further to talk about how there's no slings. And the reason she's saying that is like, because we are a living system and we are all so dynamic and our patterns are so different, and the way we move every day and everything that has been impacted in our body and our fascia, it's like there's only so many lines that we can structures that we can place on the fascia, but it's such a mystery. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of fascia, is like it's so mysterious. And she's another great one too to dive into her books and her podcast. But yeah, Tom Myers. I mean, that I think it's so important what he did, because it just helped to also give information to people who are just learning about fascia. Like, oh, okay, so sort of broaden from the muscle to a groupings of muscles. Like that, I feel like is a leap that a lot of people's brains can take. And when I show clients that, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like, show them the lines. Like, see, it's not just this muscle. Like, you're saying you have this down here, but I just did some fascial testing and you're showing restriction up here. Can you see why that's connected?
Yeah.
That if I pull up here, it's going to like make this down here on your foot have this pain.
Yeah.
That might happen. So it's helpful, I think, just for explaining it too. And again, that book is so dense and so genius and
absolutely
so wonderful.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's really fascinating too, as somebody who has an overbite, right? Because my overbite, right, now that I'm learning more about this, my overbite affects my vocal diaphragm, which affects my diaphragm, which affects your pelvic floor, because they're all interconnected. And what I think is really, I mean, what was really nice about Tom Myers is that he does these anatomy dissections so that you can really see how the fascia interconnects these muscles too. So I mean, not that they're all connected in this one way, but it just gives you a visual understanding of that interconnection within the body and how it really is like, like you said, like one thing isn't just one thing, it's all interconnected. So to be mindful of that is really important.
Yeah.
Speaking of mindfulness, one of the things that I really enjoyed about working with you is the level of mindfulness and somatic healing that you offer your clients when they're starting to kind of understand this work. And when we first sat down together, we did a 90-minute session. And in that session, I had filled out a series of intake forms that went pretty deep, like a lot deeper than what I had expected to go into when I was initially meeting someone for some pain that I had been experiencing, because we talked a lot about trauma. And like now that, I understand a lot more about what it was, I was like, okay, now I get it. But I remember initially I was like not 100% sure how deep to go. And this, in sharing with you, like what I had experienced and I just find that really fascinating. And I know that during our experience as well, like what was so beautiful about working with you is that you really hold space in an eloquent way. And as you're experiencing these releases of fascia, like you had said, emotion comes up. And I know for me, emotion had came up, but it felt very healing to allow that emotion to come up, to release and to be heard, you know? Because being heard is really important.
Yeah.
When you're like resolving that, when you're resolving that pain that you had no idea was there.
No. Yeah,
that you're holding on to that.
Yeah.
So, and you had also guided so lovely in some somatic experiences that I now use. And I also share just into understanding how you're feeling things in your body, which is really beautiful practice. So I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's so important. And I think that's it's one of the primary parts of my mission really too, is like to be a healthcare practitioner, as an occupational therapist, to be someone where, occupational therapists by nature are very holistic. That's what we're trained in, is to see.
What is an occupational therapist?
Yeah. So occupational therapists do all kinds of things, but primarily the word occupation means anything that we do that has meaning and purpose. That's what the word occupation means. So it doesn't mean job. That could be one aspect of something in your life you do that gives you meaning and purpose. But, for someone who just had a stroke, something that has meaning and purpose to them might be being able to put their pants on.
Right.
So an occupational therapist's work can span from like the most basic tasks of someone's life to working on, expanding their spiritual life. It can be and anywhere in between. So yeah, but our primary purpose is how do we remove obstacles for people to live a quality life and to be able to do the things that they have identified are meaningful and purposeful to them. So for me, my little niche is people who their obstacle is pain, and I want to help them. I want to know what it is that they're not able to do that they really want to do, and the pain is an obstacle to that. So helping them with in the realm of their physical pain, but understanding that it's not just physical pain, that it could be an emotional pain underneath that it could be a lack of connection to spirit or divine or support, that it could be that their environment is toxic for them. Like there's all different components that can show up and manifest as a physical symptom. So really my inroad is like the physical symptom and the myofascial work, but I'm always aware of these other, it's like, I don't see people as like a straight line or one.
No, I feel like you look at like all, like if you were to like talk about like the Kundalini bodies, like you kind of look at all the bodies of the system. It's not just the physical body. It's the emotional body. It's the mental body.
Right.
It's all of it's everything. The energetic body.
Yeah.
You even do a little bit of tuning, like some sound healing during your sessions. I don't know if you always do that, but I know I experience that. Vibrational healing that is very real, especially since we have so many crystals.
Exactly.
Right?
I know.
Right?
Isn't that wow? I mean, that's a whole nother realm. Yeah, that I want to dive into more. But
absolutely. Yeah. Wonderful. So consciousness versus unconsciousness.
Yeah.
Of our fascial tissue. Like I had just see myofascial release. She's not like specifically myofascial release, but she definitely focuses on fascia when it comes to massage. And we had a really interesting conversation. She's actually the one that turned me on to the word soften for the year of 2023. And she was explaining to me that our fascial system can become unconscious in ways that it's almost like the muscles, or not the muscles, but the fascial parts of the body can kind of overtake and just be dominant or just continue to hold like the tension in it all of the time, to the point where it's almost hard for us to in some ways feel it or be aware of it. So it just becomes an unconscious part of the body. And I might not be explaining that correctly, but that was my understanding. Does that sound familiar? Or?
Yeah. And, I actually don't really know like the scientific explanation for that. But what I know that it happens because I have experienced that and had other people too, where it's like, certain bodies that I'll work on are like, I don't feel that, or like the communication isn't happening. And I just want to say a couple things about that. That's just sort of my own theory, which is, I think we all have different sensory systems also, like the registration of sensory input, right? So this goes into like sensory integration is like, is it even getting through the brainstem? With certain bodies and certain systems, we all have a different profile. So it could also be that there's certain bodies that need way more deep pressure, which is our proprioceptive system. And they need a lot of it for it to register. So if it's not registering, then you're not, quote, feeling it, right? Like you're not sensing it, you're not conscious of it because it hasn't registered in the brain. So that's one thought I have about that is like sort of different people might have more of an acute like a sensory system where they are feeling it all, like they feel it everywhere. But I think what you're talking about is like areas where it might be unconscious or sort of numb. That made me think of two things. One is just knowing that when we have adhesions and tension in the connective tissue system, and I know John F. Barnes says this, and I don't actually know where he got this. I haven't like read where he got this. I'm like, how does he know that? But he does say this often, which is that it can create 2,000 pounds of pressure on the pain-sensitive nerves. So that could create pain. But also what it makes me think of is, well, could it create then like a blockage where there's just like that sensory nerve is not going to send any information to the brain.
Interesting.
So that you're not going to register it. So you're not conscious of it because those sensory, that's not coming into the brain registering. So, and I've actually toyed with the idea of convincing someone who does research to do research on sensory integration and the fascial system, because there's a lot of research on sensory integration, thanks to Jean Ayres, who is an occupational therapist, who's amazing. She's no longer with us, but, and fascia, there's a bunch of research, but like, I want to see the research of the two together. And I wonder if this would be part of that understanding of like both sensory integration, like at the brain level, but then also like, well, if there's that pressure, it can create pain, but can it also create that numbing and that inability for information to get through? I mean, that makes sense to me, but I don't know if that's what's really happening. That's my theory.
It's fascinating. And it sounds like there's a lot of room for us to start to understand and explore. Yeah. And I know that we can definitely talk about this all day. But what are some of the other things that you do as an occupational therapist? I know you talked about this with like fascia, and we talked about what an occupational therapist is. Do you specifically only work with fascia, or do you do other work as well?
Yeah. So in my practice, in my business, I do myofascial work. I also have started more integrating like parts work. So talking with people about inner child parts if they come up in a session. And that kind of goes back again to what we were talking about with the link to trauma and early experiences that someone might have that then create that emotional scar. And then if something comes up for someone, I want to have that space where I can let them know that they can dialogue or have an expression through their words to tell me, or an expression through their body. But one of my mentors, Kelly Clancy, shout out to Kelly Clancy and Tensegrity Medicine. She is an internal family systems trained therapist. So, I'm not trained in internal family systems, but I glean a lot from her and working with her. And I hope to actually go through that training, because it's so profound and feel like it really just is so complementary to doing fascial work when things get released, to have that ability to hold space for the different parts or things that might come up. I also have, I spend about a day, maybe a day and a half sometimes with kiddos doing sensory integration work.
Cool.
So
what is that like?
So sensory integration, a little bit I talked about, is we all have different sensory profiles, meaning we register our sensory input differently. And sensory meaning not just the five senses that we commonly know about, but also our proprioception, which our fascia is like our proprioceptive system, knowing where our body is relative to other parts of the body and in space. We have our vestibular system, which is our inner ear, which lets us know where our head is and relationship to gravity, velocity. And then there's also the interoception, which is like that internal body sense. So oftentimes when there's behaviors typically seen in kids, but it's all of us have sensory systems, right? So like we have behaviors that oftentimes are a result of our sensory system either being overloaded or under responsive to certain input. So I work with kids who in the classroom or at home are showing behaviors, whether they're aggressive behaviors or they're lethargic or they have poor social skills or they're super clumsy. And a lot of all of those things, even social skills, goes back to their sensory system. They're not being understood in terms of what their sensory system needs.
Yeah.
So it's an investigatory process of determining like, hey, what's this kid's sensory profile? What am I seeing? And then providing those inputs that they need in a measured way so that they can be successful at whatever it is that I'm working on with them, and then slowly build up their ability to process that information.
See, I think that is so fascinating. I know, and well, first of all, I think it's really important that we're working with children. I think it's so awesome that you're doing that work because they're our future and we need to be able to be there for them and guide them in every way that we can.
Yeah.
And I think these, a lot of our children are so overly, they experience so many senses, like they're kind of over, I can't think of the word for it right now, but you kind of get what I mean. They're like, it's just like sensory overload from tech, which is a completely different type of sense than the senses that we're talking about. Because in some ways, in a lot of ways, because they're not actually getting up and out and moving your body and doing some of these other things that you might do if you didn't have tech in your life so often, right? And especially now that, iPads and computers and stuff are so much more in the classroom as well. Do you find that more and more kids are needing this type of sensory work because of tech? Or do you find that there's what do you think about that? Is that connected at all?
Yeah. Well, and I also just want to say, I do also do fascial work sometimes with my kiddos if it's appropriate, because I really feel like all the kids' fascial systems do need input. And I would even just say 85% of the kids I work with need deep touch pressure.
That's interesting.
To like give them that relaxation response, calming effect, but also just a sense of their body, like where their body is. So, and that's so common, but you have to be creative with kids. So like how to give them that.
Right.
So I often find that a lot of the kids I'm seeing too just aren't getting enough of that movement that they need, like intense, at least like some intense movement, like resistance and like pulling, pushing, because that activates that proprioceptive system. And when they get it, then they're able to communicate. I use sometimes, it's like what's it called? Like oh my gosh, like it says too low, just right, too high.
Like a like kind of a,
can't think of the word of what they're called. Like a scale, like I have a thing that they can push and it goes either too low, just right, too high. So I'm able to gauge, like after we do a lot of intense movement, like say with the trapeze bar and like doing tons of core work, but making it a game. Once they get that intense movement and that input into their joints, then we go and I ask them like, where are you at? And they're like, oh, just right. Like if kids got an hour of that every day, a lot of these kids, and it's hard. I totally get it. I have so much compassion for parents and teachers.
No, absolutely.
Bless their hearts. It's hard in the system that we're in.
Right.
But it is essential.
Right.
For their.
But I think that that's why it's important, because we need awareness around it in order for us to be able to offer these solutions for our future, for our children, for everything that they need that they're not getting, because life is changing so quickly and it's so easy to just go along with it and not really realize what's happening before it already happens. And then life becomes happening to us versus, and then we forget all these different things that we could have been doing to help support them along the way. And how could we have done that? What could we have done? So I digress. I digress. But I do think it's important for our kids to have that connection to our bodies and to start to understand what that what that even is, what that feels like, because I think that it's so easy for them to lose that in this day and age. And it causes more of the, at least I notice it with my, like, with I don't have children myself, but I have lots of like second cousins that are wonderful. But I do notice that, like the iPad time is so addicting for them. And a lot of times it causes these tantrums, because of the dopamine and all of these like hits that they're getting from that. And then when they go to school, then they have issues with cognitive behavioral skills, and they usually have issues with like ADHD or ADD and things of that nature. And it's hard for them to cope. And then we go back to where, your solution came was, okay, well, let's just give them some medication because we don't really know. We don't really know how else to help them because they're just unruly, right? Or whatever it is, or we've tried everything and it's not that. And maybe it's just that they need more of this kind of work where they can wake up their sensory in the way that their body really needs it, get more connected within themselves, just like we need.
Yeah. It's just as much us as adults, too. And I find that I often, when I'm talking with parents, that it comes down to that too. Like, what can you do together? Right? Like hike together, or, it seems so simplistic, but it's hard, first of all, in this day and age. I'm sure being a parent, I'm not a parent either. And part of the reason I'm not a parent is because I just don't, I think it would be really hard in the, the systems that we have set up right now. And I'd rather be there to support the kids that I, even though it's minimally every week, but I want to be contributing in some way. And that feels really important to me. And
that's also the reason why we need community, because we can't do everything.
The parents can't do it all themselves.
We can't do everything. No. So we need people like you and some of the other really amazing people in our community that do offer options for kids, and the ways that they need it, that we can't give it to them. Because like, you're right though, like our parents look at, our kids look at our parents as role models, and as, parents well know. And so everything that you're doing is a learning opportunity for your children on how they should be living and how they should be thriving in their future and how they're going to continue to live and grow. So it is important for our parents to understand these things too.
100%.
And to feel what it's like. And so that way you guys can do it together. Yeah. I agree. And now a word from our sponsors. Are you ready to elevate your consciousness and establish connections with individuals who share your interest on the breathtaking Central Coast? Look no further than the Central Coast Conscious Community, your gateway to spiritual growth and community connection. The Central Coast Conscious Community is a vibrant hub for individuals seeking holistic well-being, personal transformation, and collective awakening. They offer a diverse range of events, workshops, and gatherings that nourish the mind, body, and soul. Dive into their membership directory for an insider look at the incredible holistic practitioners who are ready to guide you on your journey. From acupuncture to Zen Buddhist meditation, you'll find a wealth of expertise to support your well-being. The best part? The community calendar is free to the public, making it accessible for everyone to explore and engage with their offerings. Are you passionate about supporting your local community and being at the forefront of upcoming events? Become a conscious community advocate by volunteering your time and be the first to receive information about exciting happenings. For just $88 a year, you can help further the mission of the Central Coast Conscious Community. Calling all practitioners, facilitators, and space holders. Elevate your visibility and reach by becoming a professional member. Gain access to advertising and digital marketing exposure. Promote your upcoming events and classes and join the online directory for easy discovery. Develop a greater sense of community and connection right here on the Central Coast for just $188 a year. The Central Coast Conscious Community invites you to be a part of something greater, where holistic well-being and mindful practices unite. Visit thecentralcoastconsciouscommunity.com today and join this thriving community dedicated to supporting your journey towards wellness and connection. Central Coast Conscious Community. Discover, connect, thrive. Visit centralcoastconsciouscommunity.com now.
Oh, there was something I found that I wanted to share. Yeah. And gosh, if I totally, I'll just do my best.
No, it's okay.
So this was an author, I think it was like in Germany. And actually I couldn't get the name of the article because it was in German or something. So I'm going to try and find it in English, but it was referenced in one of these other articles that we'll have in the show notes. Does fascia hold memories? And so it was this researcher named Hein, and he was talking about how this neurotransmitter called substance P was found to be a modulator for pain perception, and it plays a role in memory processing. Yeah, so that was what he was talking about in this article, was like looking at all the research that's out there to see, does fascia hold memory? Like, can it hold memory? And this particular researcher found that this neurotransmitter was able to modulate pain and also played a role in processing memory. And that when this substance is released from the nerve endings, which is driven by the hypothalamus, which happens after an emotional trauma, that it can alter the collagen structure into a specific hexagonal shape referred to as an emotional scar.
That's really interesting.
So and I was like, I want to read that article.
That's almost kind of like what we talked about with the messages in water,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
Like, I wonder if, I wonder if that's like related on that molecular level. Like, it'd be really fascinating to look to see like how similar like the molecular structure could be at a cellular level to like how things have changed in water. And what I think is really fascinating is like when we talk about like vibration, right? And how like when we can apply higher vibrational waves to the body, right? We can start to, like we had said, like higher vibrational waves as in like emotions even, like that can also start to change us at a cellular level. Like, I wonder, it would just be so fascinating to either read research about it if anybody's done it. Like, please feel free to share with us.
Yeah.
If you've read anything, or to like, well, I won't be doing this research, but but to learn more about, what that might look like, because we're so close, like,
I know. And more, there is like the community of people doing work in the fascial, like at the Fascial Congress, and all the people that are contributing, like it's moving. There's more and more happening. And I just feel like the more mainstream it becomes, and also the work that like, people like Bessel van der Kolk and Peter Levine of trauma living in the body, and just having this be more of a normal, like this is normal, and we all need to help each other process this through for the planet's sake.
Yeah. Major.
I mean, I always think about it like this is for the planet's sake. Because if we don't attend to that in ourselves, it's really hard to take care of and be tender towards that which we live on. Because we're living in our own body,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a really great point, because I think a lot of times it can be really hard to stomach all of the things that are going on in the world. Like, it's really easy to want to ignore like all the things that are going on in the world.
Overwhelmed.
Or be overwhelmed. Because of the fact that it's overwhelmed. Be careful, because the palm tree. It's really easy to be overwhelmed by, especially because, like we said, tech, right? It's so easy to, get on your phone or get on YouTube or any of these things and see what's going on in the world, which is also really enlightening and fascinating at the same time, because we are hyper aware. We can be hyper aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
And in some of us, that can drive this sense of I can't do anything about this. It's so overwhelming. What can I even do? Like, where do I even begin? Like, how, and you feel like you have zero control, right? And it can feel awful, right? Really depressing and hopeless in some ways. But when we look back at the fact that like change always starts within, it always starts within, and it seems so small, and it seems, you know, silly in the beginning to think that that's really something that can make a difference. But speaking from somebody who's like, you know, gone through my own journey of healing, you know, I know that this is true. I know that, you know, it's a ripple effect, right? Like every single opportunity we have to grow and heal ourselves and work towards that wholeness is a ripple effect. And it affects not just ourselves, but the community and all the people around us. It makes me emotional because I just think it's really beautiful. And I think that we all need that hope. And understanding because we're just in this state of this world where if we don't, then it's a little bleak, right? You know, and I hate to be bleak, but like, you know, like we're in a very dire state. We need to start to wake up.
And that is, I think, really important to name and to say and to speak out loud, even though it's hard to face that truth. Like, we are in a place where
it's dire straits.
We're in crises. It's sort of like right before you go to the ER. You know, you're like on the verge of like, I think I need to go to the ER if we're thinking of that just on the microcosmic level. And then you think macrocosmic level of the earth. It's like, that's where the earth is. She needs to go to the emergency room almost. And unless we do intervene, you know, really quick. And I just, and, you know, it's like both and it's never too late to start pivoting.
Right.
Like we can pivot. Why? What do we have to lose if we try to pivot? And that, like you were just saying, is like the first part of that pivot does have to come from a deep place of like self-love, self-compassion, turning in and really being committed to like walking through the processes to heal, because then it comes from more of a genuine place of, oh my gosh, I don't want to, you know, throw this piece of plastic on the beach, you know, like, you know, I mean, that's such a small example, but like, it really does. It creates more of a genuine, deeper desire to do something in your own life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Jahara, I mean, I feel like I could talk to you for hours.
Same. Can I just throw one more name out there
for
people to look up on this topic for hope? Is Thomas Hubble is an amazing spiritual teacher, and he is doing amazing trainings and free talks and meditations all about collective trauma healing.
Oh, beautiful.
So just, you know, look him up and connect to what he's doing, because I really feel like he understands that like we're all in this together. We've all been traumatized. We all need to do this work and support each other and, you know, not feel isolated.
Yeah. And I think that's beautiful. I can't wait to look that up. I can't wait to look him up and to dive into some of the work that he's doing, because the more we can grow compassion for ourselves, it grows into naturally compassion for one another, right?
Yeah.
Once we start to really understand that we're all suffering, we all are carrying our own level of suffering and trauma, and we need to learn how to hold each other in light, right? And to be in a greater community with one another versus how can we divide and conquer and separate and all those things. So I think that's beautiful. Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Is there anything that you'd like to share with those of you who are actually watching the podcast? Like any like myofascial release techniques that you could show us really quick to
show you? That's hard, but yes, I could.
And if you don't have anything here, we can always add a link. I know you have some videos and things.
I do. But one thing I think maybe I will have you do, and we can do this together, is if you want to just roll up your sleeves, if you have sleeves, is you can do a technique on yourself called skin rolling. And it's also kind of just an exploratory process of like sensing into your fascia. So if you take your skin on your wrist, so above the bony prominence there, so just where there's the middle of the forearm, and just give it like a little tug, kind of feel how you probably can feel the pressure of your fingers holding the skin. But if you really sense in, see if you can feel a pull from deeper down in the arm. So not just on the surface, like, can you sense where that pull is stopping? So that gives you a sense of, okay, there's that superficial fascia, but you're also affecting, there's layers below that you're pulling and tugging on. So that's just more of the exploratory way you can do it. But then if you want to do an actual practice on yourself, is you can catch that skin again and roll. So sort of like inchworm your fingers up the arm, rolling while you're gently tugging. So you're pulling on the skin, but you're rolling it between your pointer finger, middle finger, and thumb. And kind of just inchworming your way up the arm. And you can just go to like the eye of the elbow area. And then just sort of sense and feel after you do that, like you probably feel some sensation along that line. So you just created a little bit of agitation in that connective tissue. And then you can do it on the other arm. So you can pull up just above the wrist, a little bit of tension, and then like an inchworm. You don't have to fully keep contact. You can kind of pick up your fingers and replace them if you can't roll the skin the whole way.
It's really interesting because I can like feel it down to like the pinky, even though we didn't touch the pinky.
Yeah.
So that's always fascinating too, because it almost feels like your skin just kind of opens up. It just feels like it kind of softens and allows itself to take space.
Yeah. And another way you can do that too is by twisting it. So you can like catch it and twist. And this is something you can do with myofascial balls. Like you can put a little pressure down and then twist. I don't think I have a video on that, but that's a good reminder that I should do a video on that. So yeah, I do have videos. I don't know if you want me to share at this point my website or any of that information.
How can we get in touch with you?
Radiance-therapy.com, radiance-therapy.com. I have a shop page on there, which has some videos. I will have a subscription. I'm hoping by mid-year this year, but I will be putting up more videos too. And if you sign up for my newsletter on my website, you'll get a free video. And that takes you through some self-myofascial release practices for the upper neck and then for the back of the hips. And then like a mindfulness practice on that video. And was there anything else I wanted to share? Oh,
what about Instagram?
Oh yeah. Instagram is radiance.therapy.
Great.
Yes.
Any other socials that you're on that you use?
Facebook. I use Facebook's. I try to, and that's just Radiance Therapy. I'm pretty sure.
I'm sure they're interconnected.
Yeah,
too.
And it's on my website too. So if you go to my website, there's all the links there to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
She has a beautiful blog on there too with some amazing, really amazing content, journaling prompts and things of that nature as well. And I just love how you also go into being a now it's going to slip my brain. It's like it's there and now it's gone, but continue. Yeah. So I know you're doing some 4-class series, and by the time that this is released, they will have passed. But Jahara's always doing she's always offering really amazing retreats as well as classes and series. She will be doing a workshop here at Expand and Breathe. Hopefully it won't be her last. Hopefully it'll be her first of many. Here also talking about the myofascial system and healing trauma and pain in the body as well. So, but yeah, if you want to share some of the classes and things that you have coming up.
So I always do 3 to 4 local retreats every year, and they're local, but people come from all over the country, all over the world. I've had people from Germany come. And so there's a really beautiful retreat center in Santa Margarita. And so on my website, if you go to my website, it'll say all the dates that I'm doing this year. So I have one coming up in a couple days. And then I have one in March, one in June, one in August. And then next year I'll have probably 3 or 4 again. So just stay tuned to my website for that. And I know me and Michaela are going to be visioning an international retreat. So look out for that.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be expansive. And yeah, like Michaela said, I have, I'm just starting to do some class series in my studio, small studio, but I'll do more of them too. So if you are local, and for people who aren't local, again, the retreats, and also stay tuned for a subscription offering on my website soon. But in the meantime, you can do one-time purchases of some of my videos, which just gives some great guidance for how to do some of the myofascial release work on yourself.
Yeah, you have an online a program that you do for pain, right? Am I mistaken? That you walks through. Maybe I'm mistaken.
Yeah, no. I am going to be creating something, but it's not specifically for that.
Maybe I was mistaken.
Yeah. But I do also have a PDF document on my website that you can purchase. And it's a process for doing inner child dialogue also. So like how to create a practice and how to determine like, well, who's dialoguing with who? And it's journal prompts, but also just instruction for how to make that a practice to get in tune with different parts of yourself. And I intend to also have a journal that will come out, not there yet, but, and also some online programs like retreat style programs online, but those are all in the making. So if you want that information, my website will have it updated when it's there.
Yeah. Lots of
in the universe's time.
Exciting things to come from Radiance Therapy. Thank you so much, Jahara, for being here today. And I'm just so grateful for all of your wisdom and it's just an absolute joy to have you in today. So thank you so much for taking the time and for sharing all of your knowledge with us.
Thank you. It's a blessing to be here.
And thank you all for sticking around and for joining us for this podcast today. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation with Jahara Sara of Radiance Therapy. And we look forward to seeing you back in studio very soon. And namaste. Namaste.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.